At 12:30 p.m. Central Time, Friday, November 22nd, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was shot twice, once through the back, exiting his neck, and another shot through his head, while riding in a motorcade through Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. The president was declared dead of his injuries at Parkland Memorial Hospital 30 minutes later. The JFK assassination has spawned many conspiracy theories. Multiple official investigations into the incident, including the Warren Commission in 1964 and the House Select Committee on Assassinations of 78-79, have been greeted by public distrust and skepticism due to the investigations being conducted in secrecy and that many records were sealed. Without being able to judge for themselves, the American people did not believe the findings of the Warren Commission, which completed its investigation in September 1964, 10 months after the president was assassinated. It concluded that Oswald acted alone. However, the House Select Committee on Assassinations concluded that Oswald acted in conspiracy. The public never trusted either investigation, culminating in the Oliver Stone movie JFK, which alleged disturbing conclusions, not the least of which was that the public could not trust investigations conducted in secrecy. Other commissions followed that further increased public distrust of government agencies that conducted business in secret, uncovering illegal activities of the FBI, CIA, IRS, and U.S. Post Office. It was revealed that these governmental organizations had deliberately ignored direct orders of the president and carried out their illegal activities even after being ordered not to do so. These commissions demonstrated that the FBI and CIA hid files from each other and deliberately misled the Warren Commission. This brought to light the fact that many governmental organizations were working illegally through mail intercepts, wiretaps, infiltrating political groups without probable cause, and in violation of constitutional rights. The illegal actions of some of these groups has continued to current times, often violating the Constitution of the United States by stepping on the inalienable rights of U.S. citizens and acting in violation of the Congress and the President. In order to address public distrust over the sealed files and multiple investigations, Congress passed the JFK Assassination Records Collection Act of 1992 to gather and reopen all records related to the assassination of the president. Why is this, and why does the JFK assassination loom so large in the world of conspiracy theories? And what impact has it had on our perception of government? Let's start off with highlights of the very interesting life of Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee Harvey Oswald was born on October 18, 1939, to Marguerite and Robert Edward Lee Oswald. Lee's father died 2 months before he was born due to a massive heart attack. Lee's childhood was marked by instability and financial troubles. Marguerite moved residences frequently, and Lee often changed schools. Between Lee's birth in 1939 and 1948, Lee had moved 11 times and attended 7 different schools. His mother made it known to the boys that they were a burden. The closest thing he had to a father figure was Edwin Ekdahl, whom Oswald's mother had married in May 1945. But the marriage quickly broke down, and the couple divorced in 1948. Oswald and his mother moved to New York City in 1952 after Lee's older brother Robert had joined the Marines. Lee's half-brother, John Pick, was stationed in New York with the Coast Guard. Lee would have been 12 years old when he arrived in New York and was most likely first exposed to the ideas of socialism, communism, and Marxism during his stay there. His time in New York was marked by truancy and turbulence. Lee underwent a psychological evaluation in April and May 1953 and was found to be emotionally disturbed with aggressive tendencies, deprived of attention and rejected by his self-involved mother. The Oswalds left New York before Oswald's truancy case could be resolved by the court system, and they returned back to New Orleans in January 1954. Lee was 15 years old. The Warren report points out that the lack of relationships in Lee's life, the fact that he had no close friends, a remote mother who demonstrated little affection, and left Lee with the feeling that he was a burden. Roughly 2 years later, on October 8, 1956, Lee wrote to the Socialist Party of America to join as a youth leader. Then on October 24, 1956, 16 days later, Lee enlisted in the Marine Corps. It was only a few days after his 17th birthday. Lee was following the example of his older brother, Robert. Lee, however, was very unpopular in the Corps, and most of the men avoided his company. During rifle training as a Marine, however, Lee scored as a sharpshooter in a marksmanship test, but then scored at a lower rating on subsequent tests. Lee ended up being court-martialed twice, once for firing a .22 handgun he was prohibited from possessing on base, and again for punching a sergeant who Lee thought was responsible for the court-martial. Upon his discharge in 1959 for an alleged hardship, he promptly defected to Russia via Helsinki, Finland. He had studied Russian while in the Corps, but he was a poor student, and his Russian was unimpressive. Oswald arrived at the Berlin Hotel in Moscow on October 15, 1959, 3 days before his 21st birthday, and he applied for citizenship in the USSR the next day. His request was denied, and Oswald was ordered to leave by October 21st. On the 21st, however, Oswald opened his veins in a dramatic suicide attempt and was brought to a hospital for treatment. On October 31st, he publicly renounced his U.S. citizenship at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, allegedly throwing his passport onto the ambassador's desk. It turns out that Lee, in fact, held on to his U.S. passport during his entire stay in the Soviet Union and never became a Soviet citizen. Oswald was viewed by the KGB as mentally unstable and possibly a U.S. agent. Since the Russians did not want any negative publicity associated with Oswald and any actions he might take if refused residency in Russia, he was granted temporary permission to remain in the Soviet Union in November 1959. Oswald was ordered to live in Minsk, a city loaded with Soviets, where Oswald's actions could be tracked more easily. He would be kept out of the view of the U.S. Embassy. Since the KGB assumed that Lee could be a U.S. agent, his home was bugged and all his moves were monitored so that he could reveal himself. Interestingly, Lee was never interrogated by the KGB, who did not find him interesting enough. However, every bar, party, or social event that Oswald attended was monitored and staffed by KGB agents. According to the testimony of Yuri Nosenko in front of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, the KGB refused to meet with Oswald. According to Nosenko, a KGB agent who defected to the U.S. in 1964, only 3 Americans defected to the Soviet Union in the period between 1955 and 1960. Although defections from the U.S. to Russia were very rare at the time, Nosenko stated that Oswald was not of interest due to his low rank, which was private, and due to his interest in Marxism. Ironically, the KGB was ordered not to recruit members of a foreign country's Communist Party during the 1950s. In all likelihood, this was due to the fact that the Communist Party of the United States was infiltrated by plants working for the U.S. Lee was assigned a job at the Gorizont radio plant to work as a metal worker at the lowest skill level. Almost 2 years later, on March 17, 1961, Lee met a 19-year-old pharmacy worker named Prusakova. It is hard to believe that Marina was not a KGB agent, but no evidence has surfaced to support this. In May 1962, Oswald planned to return to the U.S. with his wife, Marina, and their daughter, June. They had lived very poorly in the Soviet Union, and he hoped for a better life. They arrived back in the U.S. in June 1962. Although Oswald was honorably discharged from the Marines originally, his status was later changed to undesirably discharged after his defection to the Soviet Union. Lee wrote then Navy Secretary John Connally in January 1962 about this perceived injustice and requested that the discharge papers be corrected. John Connally, who was then leaving the Navy Department to run for governor of Texas, informed Oswald that his letter would be forwarded to Connally's successor. Oswald then took up the matter with the Navy Discharge Review Board, which refused to modify the discharge status. John Connally was later seriously wounded by Oswald in the JFK assassination. This connection created the theory that Connally was Oswald's real target, not Kennedy. Despite financial troubles, lack of proper clothes, and food for himself and his family, Lee began to acquire firearms. He ordered a .38 revolver from Los Angeles in January 1963. On March 12th, Oswald ordered a rifle from Klein's Sporting Goods of Chicago, Illinois, using a coupon clip from a rifle magazine. The rifle was a surplus Italian Mannlicher Carcano 6.5 millimeter rifle. The rifle was shipped to an A. Hidell to a post office box opened up by Oswald. The alias was one that Oswald had used previously. In April 1963, Oswald used the rifle in an attempt to assassinate General Edwin Walker at the general's home. Walker survived when a bullet struck a window frame and fragmented. Walker was known for his conservative political views and was a staunch anti-communist. Walker had been previously criticized by President Eisenhower for sharing political opinions while in uniform. Interestingly, Walker resigned from the Army in 1961 after being accused of links to the John Birch Society, claims that Walker denied. An Army investigation exonerated him of the claims. By resigning, Walker gave up a $12,000 per year retirement benefit, which he claimed was due to a matter of principle. Later in life, General Walker was arrested for public lewdness in a Dallas city park on July 8, 1976. Getting back to Lee, he moved back to New Orleans on April 24, 1963, when he was fired from his job at the time. Lee believed that he could find work in his hometown. Lee had trouble holding down any job as he quickly lost interest and typically spent time loafing around, reading magazines, and discussing guns. It was reported by eyewitnesses at the time that Lee abused his wife, Marina. He often became violent and hit his wife, leaving her with visible bruises. By June 1963, in New Orleans, Lee planned to begin a chapter of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, a pro-Castro Marxist organization founded by journalist Robert Tabor. Oswald ordered leaflets to be printed to support the Cuban Revolution and Fidel Castro. On August 9, 1963, Oswald attracted the attention of local police and the FBI when an altercation erupted with anti-Castro Cuban refugees and Oswald, who was dispersing hands-off Cuba pamphlets. The FBI sent the information over to the CIA since Oswald was once a former resident of the Soviet Union. The place that Oswald was distributing pamphlets was near 544 Camp Street, New Orleans, formerly an address of a CIA front organization called the Cuban Revolutionary Council. Oswald engaged in an altercation with Carlos Bringuier, a Cuban exile, who was a former member of the CIA-backed council, which was dedicated to overthrowing Fidel Castro. Lee wanted to go to Cuba and explored options to obtain a visa. He thought about hijacking a plane and flying there directly. Interestingly, after the CIA left the 544 Camp Street address, a person named Guy Bannister, a former FBI agent, occupied the office. This led the FBI to believe that Oswald was not a pro-Castro activist, but was in fact working for Bannister or some other agency. Aware of this link, the FBI hid the association of the address from the Warren Commission by giving the address of the building as 531 Lafayette Street, which was the same corner building as 544 Camp Street. Getting back to Lee Harvey Oswald, on September 25, 1963, Oswald left New Orleans for Mexico City via bus. He planned to visit the Cuban embassy there and obtain permission to travel to Cuba. He had sent his wife Marina and daughter June to Irving, Texas, to stay with a family friend a couple days prior. 2 days later, Oswald arrived at the Cuban embassy in Mexico City on September 27th. He requested permission to travel to Cuba, ostensibly to continue on to Russia. He also visited the Soviet embassy in Mexico City, but the agents there wanted nothing to do with him. Oswald got into a verbal argument with the Cuban ambassador, who felt that people like Oswald were harboring the Cuban Revolution, and as far as he was concerned, would never get a visa. The Soviets would not be issuing a visa either for Oswald. Therefore, Oswald was left dead in the water and left Mexico City on October 2nd, arriving in Dallas, Texas on October 3rd. He began job hunting as he